Moderator. He's the GM for CXR, and I was talking with him, and he told me that, in his humble opinion, Arbor is the best MDM for XR. So he is a man who speaks with authority. So welcome him to the stage.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Thank you. So I would like to welcome to the stage with me our wonderful panelists, Alyssa Whittington from Invista, Chris Koomen from Air France-KLM, Leslie Forsberg from Boeing, and Scott Burkey from WestRock. I'm just gonna move this over. I'm facing you guys. Okay. Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. So, I think it'd be best if we start off with introductions. I'll preface myself, and then I think you guys go down the line and do the same. I am Lucky Gobindram, as you heard. I serve as the general manager of CXR, a spatial computing consulting agency that helps Fortune 5000s from understanding the problem to all the way to solving it. And my panelists.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Whittington. I'm an XR developer at Invista.
Hi, Chris Koomen, working for KLM Airlines, VR engineer specialist. Started in 2015, and now we have a team again of 6 or 7 people at the moment, where we deployed VR within the company.
Leslie Forsberg, I'm an associate tech fellow for digital maintainability, and I also lead a VR group within Boeing.
Yeah, I'm Scott Burkey. I'm a technology fellow with WestRock. We're a global consumer packaging company, and I run extended reality for our organization. Awesome.
So today, guys, we're gonna dive on in and have an in-depth discussion around enterprise XR training, applications and beyond. So, training has been a catalyst of the spatial computing, XR, AR, VR domain since well before the pandemic. And with the pandemic, it definitely helped become a catalyst to help organizations that may have not been previously thinking about it, that have been thinking about it, to think about how to further use that as a tool for soft and hard skills, among other use cases. I think today through our session, we hope to share our collective insights, our successes, our failures, and how we see opportunities in the space as it evolves in the next 5-10 years. So we'll try to spend 10 minutes on each topic, and then hopefully we have some time for Q&A. So the first question I have for the group, from my own personal lens and my own experience, me and my team has been seeing more and more success and interest in solutions to better power new employees through better remote training and onboarding sessions. For example, Millennium Fiber helping train tactical employees using immersive VR training for in-field service engineers. With you guys, I want to understand how you guys are seeing engagement and behavior and success in your latest programs. And I would love to get into more of the details of how each of you plan to expand the platform to encompass more facets of the business as you go forward.
Go.
Anyone?
I guess, start. If you don't mind, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So we began our XR journey during COVID, or a little bit before that actually. During COVID, everyone runs out and tries to get remote assist technology as fast as they can. And it's gone so much further beyond that during our time. We've got, VR training and AR. We're able to post items in our, augmented reality world that people can see later, or procedures and things like that. So what we're working on now, as far as expanding, we're trying to get all of these exciting new technologies scalable. So we're facing the same difficulties with, mobile device management as many people here. How do we get a ton of headsets in a ton of hands at the same time? And how do we also scale this at the sites so that they adopt it and take it on as their own? So, I'm an XR developer, but it's not going to succeed if I send something out into a site and don't support it and don't help train people to use it, and we don't have a plan to, really get adoption so that the people using it are also the ones owning it day to day. So that's what we're working on now. Our path is that operations come in and they try something out, and they can do their training whether they're on night shift or day shift, and they go on their way.
Yeah, we do see the same benefits in it for the moments that they can train whenever they want to, wherever they want to. For us, we have this training for cabin crew for KLM Cityhopper, and they can pick up their headset in the office actually, where they start the training. And they will take that headset back home, log into, actually they connect it to their home Wi-Fi. It will update the system to the latest version, and then they can explore this aircraft, and they can do it in their own time and own meanings. And what we see is that, talk about successes, we cannot measure anything. We are not allowed to because of the regulations, GDPR and those kind of things. But what we see and what we hear is that the pilots are using it much more longer than the time that they're supposed to be working on it. I mean, normally they should bring it back within 2 weeks. Well, there was no headset ever in the last 2 years that was back in 2 weeks. So, yeah, I guess then you can see that this is quite a yeah.
And then with my team, we focus on VR, particularly hard skills for training. And so really, we see the benefit in allowing our VR users in an immersive environment to give them that space to get that muscle memory to do a task, and to give them that safe place to fail. Because a lot of times these skills, they don't, when you're doing it in the real world, you can't fail. Lives are at stake, machines are at stake, parts are at stake. And so really allowing them that opportunity to learn. And so when COVID hit, I thought for sure that, our use cases would dry up. Everyone was sent home, but only the reverse was true. We have people knocking on our doors asking for immersive experiences, and we have quite the backlog. And so it's just growing more and more lately, which is great because people are seeing the benefits of it.
Yeah, training is such a big term. I mean, it's so wide. But we focus a lot on augmented reality for training for our factory workers. Certainly, WestRock, like most companies, struggles with how to recruit and train and retain qualified workers. There's a lot of competition for folks in the workforce. So I think a big benefit that we see by using XR in training, besides the obvious, right, that it puts the right information in the right format to the right people in the right location. The big thing that we see is that as we're competing for younger workers, Gen Z has had devices in their hands since they were in the crib. And so I think it's how we train people today certainly has to be different than how baby boomers were trained 30, 40 years ago. And so we're able to kind of compete. And so I like to kind of always call out that one of the reasons we use XR for training is that it gives us a little bit of a competitive advantage when we're in the marketplace looking for job candidates. And so we're trying to be an employer of choice because it's not the coolest thing to work in a manufacturing facility sometimes, but at least if we're the one in the town that has extended reality in training, certainly we hope for that to be a draw. So that's certainly something that's advantageous for us.
So to follow on two parts, right? How do you see this evolving in your organizations as time goes on, right? 5, 10 years. But also, obviously, when we did training the way it was over the last 50 years in IRL, in real life, there was, a behavior that was mimicked and evolved, right? How do you see the benefits of this evolving, right? And do you see parity with the real world and what was going on? Or do you see advantages that you feel are evolved from doing this and repeatability of that from there? Or do you see that as something that is mimicking the real world and sort of trying to build upon that?
That's interesting because we tend to replicate the real world into a virtual reality scenario. But the thing is, when you do something like that, there's also the possibility that people who are working for years for this company and training in a real world environment, like a container where they extinguish the fire, which is very controlled and everything. What we see with some people is that they're panicking when they do the VR training because it's so realistic. So maybe you have to find the right balance between realism or not to make sure that it's working. Because you don't want to have someone fail on the system, and once someone is failed, it's always possible, but when 10% of your crew is failing, then you've got a serious problem as an airline, or either other company, so yeah, it's quite difficult.
Yeah, I think for us, it kind of depends on the use case. So if we pick the right use case, our trainings are, better than what we've done. before. So now you're in a virtual reality environment, you don't have a buzzer going off, you don't have loud equipment in the background, you're practicing in a safe space and you're new, and that's a great thing. But there have been a few things where, you know, you need to be out in that area, or maybe VR isn't the right medium for it. So I'd say it's picking the right use case that makes your training really excel and exceed the existing training.
I think that's also the role of the specialist in here that says, okay, maybe this is suitable for VR or not. I mean, I've seen people asking me to open a hangar door in VR. So let's pushing a button and walk next to it. Is that worth building in VR?
Oh yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
I think it's also really important that when you're developing this content to meet with the SMEs, you know, the ones out on the floor that are doing these jobs, you know, and the ones that are actually performing the tasks, you know, to get that real world perspective. You may think as a developer that you think you know how something works, or, you know, you think you're capturing the important part of the task, but maybe you're not, you're missing that. So really keeping connected with those SMEs and pulling them in and asking them often and getting them to test your environment is really important.
Collaborate in the project.
Yeah.
We certainly value our veteran workers and the knowledge that they have, but we wisely, as many of my colleagues will say, we wisely realize that we need to get that tribal knowledge out of their heads and in a digital format for the next generation of workers, and standardizing the knowledge that we're passing, right? Because we have, if you have a procedure in a factory floor, 10 different people, they may do it 10 different ways. We really want to standardize to remove some of the variances and errors that happen. Consistency is very important for us in consumer packaging. And so I'm really excited about the fact that once we digitize our content and our processes, not only is it trackable and we can run analytics on that and we can monitor what's happening and glean information from that, but now we know that we have not Frank's way or Steve's way or Karen's way, but we have, you know, the WestRock way, and that's important because we want to be consistent for our customers.
It becomes textbook Bible, and it's like
Yeah.
interactive in that manner.
Yeah, it's really been testing us. I mean, even our subject matter experts, you've got 2 subject matter experts in one thing, and guess what? They don't agree on some things. So we've built a training to one expert's qualifications, and then we took it to the next one, and they said, oh, no. And so it's forcing us now as a company to address that. What is the real truth, and what do we want to document for the future?
Yeah.
So I want to double click on something you said, Alyssa. You know, you're talking about good and bad candidates, right? And I think this leads into the next question that we had talked about it, but like, you know, how do you understand a bad candidate from your perspective as an organization and qualify that? Because I feel like a lot of people want to build things because they think it solves a problem, but, you know, how do you quantify the problem in your mind? And, you know, with all that exciting stuff that you guys are talking about and where you see this, right, you know, I wanted to also understand a little bit more about beyond how do you quantify bad, but how do the good solutions come to fruition, right? What are the steps you're taking in that process? How are you, you know, gearing yourself for success as you start looking at an enterprise training problem that it may have historically been solved different ways, and now that you have these tools at your disposal, how are you tactically going about going from step A to step Z?
I'll jump in on the bad versus good part. Bad versus good for us, you know, the use case, we honestly have tried to boil it down to as simple a flow sheet as we can for people, because our organizations, you know, at sites don't always necessarily know what an Oculus is, don't know what a HoloLens is, and they don't know the difference between the two, or what a good or bad VR use, XR use case is. So we've got a flow sheet we send out, and it's the simplest version that we can put together so people will understand, is it something that's tactile? Is it something that you want to use in the field, like a job aid, or is it something you want to be immersed in a different world? You know, they go the VR path. So we found that to be really good. And of course, there's, you know, 10,000 more branches to this flow sheet that we didn't send out. But for them, it's the simplest version to say, this is the difference between, you know, these headsets, and this is the difference between XR and AR and VR. And it helps guide the conversation as to what do you really want? You think VR looks cool, but is it, you don't want to practice something tactile? Maybe we don't want to go that route. So bad versus good for us is having a discussion with this flow sheet present.
I think it's a bit use case depending. What we do is actually invite the people at our office and we show them what we have everything from 360 video to full CGI evacuation training. And that gives them an idea what is possible, and then they start asking questions. So can you do this? And 9 out of 10 times they start, can you? And then I said, well, yes, we can. You don't even have to finish your sin, but how much do you want to spend for it? So what we wanted to do is trigger them and show what's possible and let them think about use cases that we can create. In that point, there's no bad at all, because everything that is bad is actually one that you learn from. And from there on, you can build new things.
Failures will lead to success.
Yeah, and to give you an example, we were working on this pushback training, and the developers were struggling with the motion sickness that they have. And they said, we don't understand why we have this motion sickness. And they said, Chris, could you look at it? And I took it on, and I said, yeah, motion sickness. And they said, yeah, but could you explain why? I said, yeah, there's no reference in here. It's a blank space, and you're driving in a blank space with no reference at all. So they created a small reference point. It was a cube, not more than that. And suddenly it was way less. And they expanded it with more reference points, point of view from the truck, and all those things. And it disappeared in the end. So it's also a kind of experience that you should have in this field to help them forward. But by let them failing, they will experience the thing that they see, and therefore they will learn much better than you just immediately correct them on what they're doing wrong.
For sure. You create a benchmark that allows them to build from it.
Yeah.
And I fully agree with what Alyssa was saying, that you really need to understand what the client wants. And sometimes they don't even know what they want. They kind of have an idea. So really getting to meet with them and sometimes doing a demo with them and showing them the capabilities is really important. And if it comes down to it, not being afraid to tell them no, that this isn't the best use case for VR or AR, right? That, maybe you tell them some other alternatives, and so not just, looking for that cool next thing for them, right? And so sometimes it's the hard no.
But also looking forward on what their plans are with it, because
Correct.
there was one pilot that said we need a HUD training for the 787, and we want it in VR. So you want us to build a full cockpit for only a HUD training? No, we're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. So if you have a plan, but you want to do more on it, then we can take a look at it. But not just because it's fancy.
Yeah, it's about the conversation.
Yeah, it's key.
It's so really not about the technology a lot of times. It's about, I used to show up to a factory and I would bring all the toys in, right? And sit them down, we'd talk and everything is cool, and then I end up leaving toys that would collect dust, right? Now when I go, and COVID cured a lot of that, because now we have more work, like Leslie was saying, we have more work than we can handle. So I show up and they want to know, where's the VR goggles, right? That's what they say, where's Iron Man, And I say, well, we'll get to that. That's in the rental car, but let's talk about your processes. Let's talk about, who's going to champion this. Let's talk about your internet connectivity in this plant. And let's talk about your plans and what you want to accomplish and how we're going to measure success. And we talk for hours or sometimes days before I ever go back to the car and get the toys and bring them out. I think a lot of it has to be, and Alyssa's right on, we've got to talk about the right things first and really qualify this opportunity. Otherwise, we're wasting a lot of people's time and money doing things that are cool but not used. And that's a big waste of time and money. We want to put these tools and technologies where they're going to bring the most impact, not where people smile the biggest.
Yeah, discovery, to lay foundational of what becomes the solution, right? Understanding real problem statements and procedural steps. So, understanding that and understanding that discovery is a big part of it, maybe we dive into how do you guys design the curriculum, right? Each problem is unique. Each problem is challenging, right? I think a lot of it is around the curriculum, ultimately. Once you quantify and qualify, there's a problem there, right? That you guys are actually going to want to solve or be worthy of solving. Some things are tactile, they have real world elements to it, some of them don't, right? Like, how are you designing curriculum to make sure that it's actually addressing these problems in those types of scenarios?
That's where they're sharing with us, at least in our case, we're sharing that flow sheet with them of what we have to offer, and the sites are sharing with us what their problem is. So I need videos. I need, videos of someone doing this task correctly and incorrectly, or a procedure. We may need to scan, sites to scan their areas and give it back to us. And this is the part where we really find out whether or not they're serious about building with us as partners. Because, at this point, it's been us showing our cool toys, and now it's time for them to reciprocate and show us what they need made and expound upon that so we can go forward and make something real. And I would say that the way that at least our team is starting to grow since the inception of us starting XR at Invista is that we're now trying to build things that are much more scalable and supportable. And we're building as though this is going to be around a while. So we're building, WebGL trainings or VR trainings as though we're going to need to support them in 5-10 years and change things on the fly, as opposed to how we did it a few years ago.
It started when I saw the problem actually in the hangars, where we had this fire evacuation training once a year, which was always at the same time, same moment, in a snowy day, in the rain, staying outside, day shift. And after 7 years in the hangars, I had like 2 evacuations. I said, this couldn't be right. There should be a way to do that much more easier. And since I was playing with virtual reality since 1996, I was finding a way to do that more often. And then this cardboard came up and I saw the solution. I just created this evacuation training with another partner. And suddenly we could do it anytime, anywhere, at any moment. So there wasn't really a problem, or there was a problem but we didn't see it.
Sure.
And now, they saw the potentials of virtual reality, and so we created more and more and more. But
Happy accident.
Yeah, happy accident, actually.
So when we first started this process, we were just kind of doing small intakes of, different assignments. But as we grew through this process, like Alyssa was saying, having that documentation of how to intake these requests, I think that's key, having a process of how you're going to go about this, do you have the videos you need? Do you have the photos you need? Do you have the documentation of the task itself? And so going through that and making sure that you have all the information you need, instead of like, as you get halfway through the process, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I need that. Do you have all the tools you need? The actual, if you're performing a task where there's hand tools you need, or machinery, having that all listed out. But making sure, and then also, do you have the capability already developed, or are you going to have to develop a new capability? That's something that we have to consider quite a bit, that we have a quite extensive list of our capabilities that we can do in VR, but if it's something new, what is the extent of that that's going to need to be developed, and that has to be considered in the estimate too that we give back to our clients. So.
When you think about curriculum, like you were talking about, Lucky, I mean, I would dare say it's an art to take a 3-ring binder full of operating procedures that are typically consumed, one way, right, and start to convert that to a digital format, even for a tablet, much less for a head-mounted device or a mixed reality device. You got to start to look at the differences in consumption there. Because if you just take a 3-ring binder full of content and go convert it over to swiping through 2D screens and static images on a tablet, maybe it's a little better, right? But you've got to really, I think the art comes in to be able to consider the user, how they're going to consume it, where they're at. Now you have the ability to do so much more in digital format, even just on a tablet, than you can do. There's no pinching and zooming images in a 3-ring binder, right? And so in a digital format, you can capitalize on some additional things, but you also have to, in these digital formats, here and here, you got to start to consider other environmental factors that you didn't have to consider when you were making that 3-ring binder. So content has to shift because the way it's consumed shifts and the way it's authored shifts, and it starts to get weird. Right? Yeah. You got to stay on top.
The environment matters, right?
It does.
Where you are, the psychology of that, it starts affecting you more than just paper on words on paper, right? All of a sudden, you are designing for something that's far greater than even the content at times, right? Because that augments that whole thing.
And you don't want the medium to get in the way of the learning, right?
Exactly.
And so I made the mistake, maybe you guys have made the mistake of going from 3-ring binder to HoloLens, and it's like, okay, let's go 3-ring binder to tablet, or let's maybe go tablet to, So I made some big jumps too quick and lost some projects in the cycles there.
But now I've got this question, because we're talking about it, and this was years ago that I came up with an idea that solved a solution. But did it change for any of you in the time that you were working on it?
Did what change?
The perspective, perspective of it. It's like, instead of solving a problem, it's now because it saves money or whatsoever.
Leslie, you can take it.
A lot of times it just comes into safety too for our users too. That it's safety-wise, time-wise too. Like how do you put a price tag on those? They're really both priceless, and so and allowing the users to practice it wherever too. So that's another consideration when you talk money part of it.
The only thing I hear this week actually is what is the whole return of investment? And I'm like, why should you have a return of investment? No one had a return of investment on email. And what we see with virtual reality is, especially with the cockpit training, is they had a paper that's like 0.005 cents. And we built a cockpit for them, entirely cockpit for the Embraer where they can train in. And what we see is that they train much more better, much more faster, they learn a lot more things, and we can use the simulator like 25% less, or actually more effective than it was before. And that's where we win in this. Yeah. So it's not always about the money, it's like...
Yeah, when I get prospects, we're talking about good, bad candidates, and I'll try and say this as professionally as possible. When I get someone, the first thing they ask me is, but how much is that? I'm like, okay, so I think maybe we are having maybe the wrong conversation, because if you're worried about $2,000 for a device that can potentially keep your machine running and producing millions more dollars of product as opposed to being down, if you're crying about $2,000 and I've got something that's going to save you $100,000, I think you're looking at it the wrong way. So we have to have some of those conversations, because remote expert in my world, remote expert makes or saves us so much money in lost production that it pays for the cost for everything else that we do in VR and MR and all of that. So the money's not the big thing. I mean, we certainly want to be a good steward of our company resources and our company funds, but there's a cost to doing this. And if we're going to just talk about the dollars and cents of devices, I'm also absolutely going to bring up all of the other soft benefits that it brings, and we're going to bring it all to the table.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, quantifying is hard, but
It is.
As far as if you really need it at sites to get your funding, be creative. That's my advice, at least. If you have to, do a benefit to cost analysis up front, think about every category and talk to a lot of people about how that could help them, because maybe it's helping safety, maybe it's helping environmental, even though you're building it for operations or maintenance, and all of these different groups, nickels and dimes add up to quarters and dollars, and very quickly, at least for us, we could show that it was easily that $2,000 for a headset meant nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and there's a lot of external data out there that other companies have done too. So if you don't know where to start and need some ideas, go out there and do some research out there, because there's been some extensive good data actually done. So,
or some networking.
Yeah, that too.
that works as well. There's a lot of information bubbling for sure, right? There's a lot of public resources. So I think that touches upon something I wanted to go into next. Challenges that we all face as practitioners, builders, people that are trying to right the ship of these organizations to be future thinking and thinking about where the longevity of investments that we've already made, the growth of the organization. How do you guys succumb and deal with this if your leaders, your team, the organization at large, to just sort of one, buy into it, invest in it, but then also maintain it and use it and grow it, right? I mean, it's good as a POC, small pocket type thing, right? It really makes impact at scale, these types of things, right? So how do you overcome the short and long-term challenges when you're thinking about this?
Yeah, adoption and scale are obviously extremely difficult, and we're all facing these problems together. Adoption for us usually starts with that small scale, with one or two managers or plant leaders believing in, blindly believing, to be honest, in what we can create, us creating something and showing them how amazing it is, and then we sort of prove it out from there. We have proof then, and we can take that to other sites, and that gives them a reason to, adopt small scale, and then scaling and getting bigger adoption is getting more levels of management on board, I think. It's more than, it's more than the people who have to use it, and it's more than, you know, the CEO and CFO. It's a lot of levels in between that need to support continued adoption for us, I think.
Yeah, I can see that. We did it actually two ways, from bottom up to engage the people to work with us and create these things together. Like with this pilot training, we had a pilot almost full-time next to us who was telling, no, you have to be there, the switch got to that side. And he felt committed to the project, and he brought it to the new people and said, well, we have built this, and literally they built it together. So we got much more support on it. And on the other hand, we took from top down to the management and said, well, this is what we are doing, and look at it. And they said, well, do they adopt it? Yes. So, okay, then continuing it. So it's a collaboration with all of the parties, actually.
Yeah, it's like the ownership bit.
Yeah.
It's that after you've developed it and before it's you know, use steady state, how do you get that ownership at a site level? For us is what we're working on.
Yeah.
Champions, essentially, people that
Yeah.
are going to help you
Yeah.
fight your way through.
And with scalability too, I think, you know, it's important to get management on board, but on another side of it too is having the talent to do the work, you know? So if you're gonna build it yourself, that you have to find the folks that are capable of doing that. And, you know, we're all very passionate about the work we do, but not everybody is. And so finding the people that are passionate about the work and that are capable of doing the work is a challenge in itself too, you know? And so especially, you know, recently, you know, we've hired quite a few game developers, you know, so it's not your typical type of, you know, folks that are doing this work. But so we had to get creative, you know, but they're amazing at what they do. And it was a very smart decision to bring them into the team. You know, we found some good ones. And so, but yeah, so that is another part of scalability that needs to be considered if you're doing, making your own content.
I guess it helps that we also put a lot on the social media, and we go out there and show people what we are doing. Like 2 weeks ago, our product owner won this IT professional award in the Netherlands, and that was wide in the media, so everyone is seeing what we are doing, and that creates a lot of support around the company as well, especially when you've got a big company.
So I take it that resourcing seems to be the challenge that is hardest to be able to do this, and, you know, process, resourcing, and testing is what really gets you guys where you guys are going. So with that in the same mind and some really interesting thoughts here, I wanted to ask you, how does your teams react to the tech, right? Obviously, having a champion is great. You know, they're the early adopters. You know, what about the rest of the team? Getting buy-in from people to use it in these workflows and really, you know, get the training to have impact to that scale. Like, you know, obviously mandating it is one thing, but, you know, get people to passionately love these things and really, you know, not have it land up as a paperweight or something that's left behind at that point, right? Something that's really a tool, right? How do you guys see that in immersive training and impact to your organization and, you know, really making it valuable?
Yeah, the reaction we get frequently, you know, it's one of two routes. It's either skepticism and fear over maybe looking stupid in VR. You know, you've done your job for 20 years and you know how to do it well, but you need to take this VR training and you're afraid of looking stupid because you don't play video games. We get that result a lot, and I would guess a lot of people at sites do. There's a lot of skepticism. You can really simulate our process. One of our examples was there's, you know, a big long metal gun that people have to use, and we wanted a VR training that involved it. And there was skepticism, can you simulate the weight of it truly without the object? Can you make it seem as long as it is in VR? So the skepticism about whether or not we can simulate it, we can usually answer, you know, we'll figure it out or we won't. But the fear part is so much harder because it's such a culture thing to overcome, and you have to get people to try it. And, you know, we've had people who are excellent trainers. They've come up with different methods, like, you know, you put a few people in a group and they do it together. So the first time they've proven that if you're in the training and someone's watching your screen as you do it, it makes the other people after you better. And it also, they've had great ideas like making it competitive. You know, your time was 16 seconds, my time's gonna be 12. So making it fun to take away a little bit of that fear is what we're working on.
Yeah, gamification is a good thing to do also to make them creative. Sorry. So, but I think the thing of fear is the fear of change is the biggest one. I mean, I can remember the moment that I came in the hangars in 2007, and there was still this 8mm film where you could scroll in to find your manuals. But there were also computers, and the machine was only there because some people were afraid to use the computer. That's the only reason why it was there. It was replaced later on, and now you've got tablets, but you see these things every moment, every time in some few years that there's a change, and people are afraid of that change, and once that's in there, then they get used to it, but you have to give them the time to use to it.
Patience.
Patience, yeah.
Yeah, there's also the fear of maybe that the XR is going to do away with their job as well. And so so there's that hand holding that you have to do sometimes with this technology. And so, what I really like to do is I like to reassure folks that this is just to enhance the processes that are out there, that initially this may not do away with some of the processes or procedures, but it's to truly enhance it to make it easier and hopefully better for the users themselves.
We do a lot I spend a lot of time just trying to desensitize our workers to the technology. A lot of apprehension, like you guys were saying about putting a VR headset on for the first time, or looking stupid, or it's going to mess up my hair, or what's it going to, cause cancer, or what's going to happen with this device, the HoloLens, and so we start slow. I think that's a great idea. What we do as well is, let's let someone go in, and the rest of us will watch on the big screen, and we'll just cast, and then you can see that they're not getting, hurt in there, they're not getting sick, they're not throwing up, right? So we start to kind of desensitize, and then, like Alyssa said, it's a great idea to start to build on a little bit of competition, because they're competitive in the factory already. They're trying to compete for a lot of, different things, and we have incentives for our factory workers. So just that desensitizing and getting them used to the devices, familiar with them, and not rushing anyone. I felt kind of like the hippie on the stage here, because I'm just like, we're just going to get the feelings going. We're going to, talk about it. We're just going to hang out and
hug it out a little bit.
Yeah, I just don't rush anything and just walk in and go, here, put this on. No, don't worry about it. Just put it on. I would never do that, because sometimes that'll backfire on you. So we just kind of ease into it. And when I find that when we just ease into it, and they see that it's not going to hurt them, right? Well, then they start to slide into it.
They might very well just have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
In the end, it's a tool, not a solution.
Yeah, and to go off what Scott was just saying, that we found success in just, sometimes people, they don't want to look stupid, because they've never done video games, right? And so the controllers are what stresses them out. So I try to encourage folks just to put, if they've never done VR, just put the headset on and just stand there, and so that they can just see what it's like to be fully immersed in an environment. And sometimes they don't understand what that is like. And it's fun to see that and to see their response. And I've had several people that just stand there and they're like, wow. And they just give them a couple minutes, and they had no idea what they would even see. And so that just kind of slowly gets them on board. And so maybe next time they will take the controllers and be able to move around and to interact with the parts.
Little confidence, have that aha moment.
Yeah, just the slow part of it.
That is, by the way, the biggest pitfall for me personal, that I think that everyone can use this headset. Just put it on and just give them the controllers, and they're like, okay, what do we have to do with it? So personally, that's the biggest pitfall. I have to explain them how it works, because it's their first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had my parents in the Oculus doing some of the trainings, and I'm yelling, use the grip, not the trigger, the grip. And so I take that and I go to work, and I'm like, have patience, more patience than you have with your parents, and be nice.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll even do they don't want to do it because they don't worry about the controllers and stuff. And I don't know if you guys have, I have a Gear VR, and I'll just say, is there somewhere in the world that you really always wanted to visit? And they're like, yeah, I've really always wanted to go to Cairo. I've always wanted to go to Rome. And so I'll go and I'll pull up a 360 and pop it in and go,
Maps thing.
Just take a look at this, right? And just stand next to the pyramids, or here, just stand on a street in Rome and look around and just kind of ease in that way and just kind of slide into it, I think I should be a psychologist maybe with some of this stuff.
I love that
You got
idea.
to ease in, because
We're taking that. Thank you.
at the end of the day, what you want is you want them to get where you're trying to get them to go for the good of the company and for their good, and rushing it too fast is not going to help anybody.
Pretty amazing, you know. I digress a bit, but like AARP as an organization, when they first started tinkering with virtual reality, we were working with them, and they were using the same paradigm. They would be transporting people to random places they've always wanted to get them to lean into virtual reality. So psychologically, I guess it's a lot of credence to that.
It's quite dangerous also. I mean, we did this with the Moderator project last year. We had this 100 years old woman, and she were not able to travel to her kids anymore, who were living in Norway, I guess. Yeah. So what we did was setting up a live feed in Norway for her in the Holland, in the Netherlands.
Amazing.
And she was putting up the headset, and she was like, oh, I'm back in my family, and I'm on the table, and it was all dressed up with all the food and things. It's such an incredible moment for not only them, but also for us, because it was a major achievement, not only for us, but technology-wise also. She had a live feed with them. She could talk with them. It was amazing. But also in my mind was like, okay, we have to be very careful for this, because suddenly we took off their headset, and then they have to realize that it's not real. So we have to plan that very well ahead. Yeah.
Do you guys think, and I know we're coming up on time, we mentioned gamification. You know, the other thing is, I feel like we alluded to a little bit, multiplayer, right, and shared experience, which is, you know, a big part of real world training, right? Like, you're never, like, rarely are you training one-to-one with somebody unless you're shadowing somebody after a certain stage. Do you think that as the world evolves, and, you know, I think we talked about some of this, like, you know, be able to share things in a space or collaborate in a more natural way where you're not doing certain tricks within spatial computing to like get somebody to bridge those mental gaps themselves, but you can have true shared multi-person experiences where you're really doing things. Would it positively impact the growth and make it easier for people and other people to follow suit? Or do you think that's an afterthought to some degree?
I think it will be, but if applied wisely. Not every use case needs multiplayer. Not every use case should have multiplayer. But do we have assets around the world that are the same? And are we using multiplayer now? Yeah, we can do that. And so you've got a trainer in Texas, and you've got an asset in England, and they're working together. So I think it's all about the use case again.
Yeah.
Well, the crew is always working together with each other. So in the fire safety training that we have, they are working together as well. 2 persons in the cabin and an instructor panel there is, and they can use it worldwide wherever they are. And they can give objects real time to them. So if the extinguisher is off, the other can grab a new one and give it to the other one to extinguish the fire, or one is opening the door and the other is extinguishing the fire. So there is possibility, but it's complex. That's what I can tell you.
For sure, not many people are doing that in the way you're doing
really
it.
complex,
So
especially
being able to hand something to each other in VR is definitely not a common or natural paradigm in VR today.
Yeah, and the timing is crucial on it. So yeah, that's very difficult. Yeah.
Okay. I think we have 2 minutes left. Maybe we open it up and see if anybody has any questions before we close it.
Thank you for this session. My name is Murali Nathan. I'm from Avery Dennison. I have a question regarding the life after traditional, if I may say that, right? So this is new ways of working we're talking about, and clearly the benefits are there. This is also regarding the dynamic between the teams after we operationalize something like this. So there was a question regarding the maintenance, the scaling, the maintenance, and the adoption, and all of that. But let's just not go that far, but just take one use case that we have implemented for a small group of users, and now they have to operate this technology for their gains. Now, is there any wisdom from this group about what that dynamic before was? Because I could go with a 3-ring binder type of a system operating procedure, and now I'm going into this new world of modality, and there was also mention about content and not overstepping on it too as well, right? How does that dynamic change? Because I think there was also mention about fear. There's the fear manifests in so many different ways for so many different people. Now, if I were to implement something like this, what would that operational environment look like? Any wisdom on that?
I mean, before we had, one trainer for one person, and they're standing there together for 20 minutes doing a task, and now it's with or without a trainer. That's the way that we're going to. I think the trainer is honestly, like you're saying, more for the psychology of it, more for the fear, well, two parts. More for the fear of, getting them over the headset the first few times, helping them with grip versus trigger, and acquainting them with the headset. And then the other part of the trainer is kind of being that device management person on site and that champion on site who deals with the tech issues of, something is down. So for me, the way I see it is that our trainers' roles are really changing. The operators and the maintenance go through the systems however they are told or however it's assigned, but the trainers' roles is really evolving.
Yeah, I can agree on that. The trainer role is more evolving than the trainee. Well, we also see that the trainee actually is training, like I said earlier, much faster because he is in a spatial environment where the distances are in one-on-one distance instead of the paper that they had in front of them. And the paper didn't change anything on the displays, and now they are changing. So when they came in this simulator where they see this cockpit for the first time, they exactly know where all those knobs are. They don't have to look for it anymore. So yeah, a lot of things are changing actually. And from the instructor side also, they are more relaxed in the cockpit because they don't have this pressure anymore for time to show them the things or explaining these. Does it answer your question?
It does. And again, it's very subjective, but thank you. No, I think you did great. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys. I think that's all the time we have. Thank you, Alyssa, Chris, Leslie, and Scott. You guys are amazing. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Great job, Lucky. Crushed it.